All right, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name's Ian Schmutzler. I'm the police chief here in the city of Vacaville, and just want to welcome you all and thank you for taking time out of your day, your lives, to come together with us as we're continuing our journey. It's an ever-evolving journey to be the best police department we can be in the best city that we can be. So I just wanted to thank you all for being here. Just a little bit of logistics. There are 3 tables where there will be audio and video recording taking place so that folks that aren't able to be here or able to watch will be able to do that in the future. So just wanted to make sure folks were aware of that. And I'm going to start by thanking our former panelists from the first Community Policing Forum, who are they've now been promoted or recruited into being facilitators. So if you're a facilitator, could you please just stand up real quick and let folks know who you are and give you a round of applause. Thank you. Yeah, we have all the panelists from our last go-around, with the exception of Katie Cardona, who Lieutenant Cardona is down south at a training, but added some additional city staff. Thank you very much for being here as facilitators as well. I also want to thank the city staff that's really responsible for putting this on. Assistant City Manager Georgianne Megger-Smith. I'm not sure where she's at, but she's back there. She's a rock star. And Angelina, and from the city manager's office, Angelina, and then Joanna she's everything related to social media, PR, all that good stuff. They make me look good when I can't do that on my own. So thank you to them. And then I also want to thank the PD staff for being here. I got to say, when the request went out for participants to be a part of this, it was an immediate reaction, and I had names coming in just right off the bat. And not only was it that big group that we had back there at about 5 o'clock when we were kind of briefing how this was going to go, but in that time, another 5 or 6 have shown up. So it's really great for me to see this department, the commitment that they have to community policing, EDI, and just how those things come together to allow us to be our best. So thank you to them. So the city's strategic plan, goal number 5, is directly related to this type of event. And that goal is to promote community engagement and increased equity and inclusion. So it comes from the top. The city council, the city manager, city management, leadership within the different departments in the city. That's where it starts, and so that's where the critical importance of this topic and having sessions like this where we can actually dialogue with one another is fantastic. So thank you so much for being here, and I would wrap things up with just want to let everybody know that we're here as your police department to serve the Vacaville folks who've lived here for 4 generations or who've lived here for 4 days. It's our job, as the city is now over 100,000 people, to police in a way that's effective to everybody in our community. And this is how we do that, by these types of events. And in the future, we'll be doing more granular events in neighborhoods, voting districts, where we really get to understand what's going on in the particular neighborhoods related to community policing. So thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to Nicole Anderson.
All right, how we doing today? We all right? You excited? We're going to have to get it together. Facilitators, you understand your job tonight, right? Is to get everybody excited about talking about community policing. In particular, one of my favorite topics is equity, diversity, and inclusion. So again, I'm Nicole Anderson. I come to you as your moderator tonight. I'm here being joined by my colleague, Dr. Shelley Jones-Holt, who you'll also see as our co-facilitator, as well as one of our other teammates and associates, Crystal McAllister, so you may notice her doing pictures and all kinds of good stuff as well. But I come to you actually as a former educator, which is interesting. Our work really centers around supporting our young people, so I just want to stop for a moment and ask our young people in the room. I see you in the back. I know you thought I wasn't going to call on you. But our young people, meaning it looks like our Boy Scouts are in the house, yes? So if you could just stand for a moment, because this is why I continue to do the work I do, because our young people actually become our adults, our citizens. So young people, yes, yes, yes. Excellent, excellent. Thank you all for being here, and don't be surprised if I call on you to be our next speakers, okay? Is that all right? You're like, oh my God, my troop leader has got to get it together and warn us of this, right? But no, just appreciate it. And again, the reason I bring it up is as a mother of three, a wife, and also a former educator, not far from y'all down the freeway in this city called Vallejo. Anybody heard of Vallejo? Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, we're going through some things, so you all know what to be in prayer and great thoughts about. But I will say I love that space, and I actually stand on the shoulders of an amazing person named Mr. Jesse M. Bethel. You may have heard of a high school named Jesse Bethel High School. So that's Granddaddy. And the reason why I'm here is because of the work that he's done to advocate across our city and also across the entire state so that equity, diversity, and inclusion actually apply to all students, to all people within all communities. So I'm excited tonight to partner with the city because, as you know, this work is very important. As Chief said, you know, this is about making sure every single one of our community members feels safe and also feels that they are included in terms of having a thriving experience in this city, whether they are brand new or have been here for forever, right? So some of us, we're going to do a little poll for a moment and see how many of you have been in this great city for most of your lifetime, actually. So you'll have some great historical knowledge to share. What I want to say to you is that as we go through this process, there's a couple things we're going to share for tonight just to set the tone, and then we're going to get started because tonight is really about you. It's about having a dialogue. There were several of you that came to our last police dialogue, and I just want you to just wave your hand if you were here at the first one. I saw some faces, yes. Thank you for returning, because would you all agree we didn't have enough time? We didn't get to finish our conversation. So we're going to continue, and the majority of tonight is really for that. So thank you for joining us again to continue with this dialogue. But what we want to do tonight is just give you a little bit of context of how we're going to go through our process. And so first, before going into that, we want to get a sense of who's in the room. You all are going to have a chance to introduce each other to each other at your tables, but we want to see like who's in the room and who's actually representing the Vacaville community. So all of you that have a smartphone, that would be all of us, right? Some of you are like, nah. But if you have a smartphone, go ahead and pull that out. You didn't know you'd have a quiz tonight, huh? So what we want to do is just give a shout out to those that are in the audience that represent the city of Vacaville, okay? And so as you pull up on this QR code, you're going to find that there's a particular question, and that question looks like this. So what you're going to share, and I'm sorry, I think I messed up already. Let me go back to your QR code. So go ahead and pull that up. Okay, it's on your table as well. And what we're going to ask you to do is just share a little bit about who you are and what you represent based on the questions that show up on the QR code. So just give us a wave so the staff can come around and make sure you're okay if you're having a hard time pulling that up. Okay.
So you have to stop and go.
Got it.
You were there.
I knew that. I said I was facilitating a dialogue. I didn't say I was a tech expert. All right, so there's our question. So we want to know how long you've lived in the city of Vacaville. All right. All right, let's get it in, get it in, get it in. All right, let's see who's in the audience. Looks like we're almost there, almost there. All right, let's see. All right, you got about 10 seconds, and we're going to reveal our results. All right. All right, so let's see what came up for us. Look at that. Welcome to our new folks in the audience. Welcome. We have several folks who have been here for 10 to 20 to 30 years, so we know we got some great historical knowledge in the audience. Our 40-plus year and our entire lifetime. Just thank you for just the service and the support that you give to your community by just investing so much time and energy here. Powerful, huh? All right, let's keep going. Let's see who else is in the audience. Another question for you. Anybody here, student or an alumni in Vacaville? So that means you may have gone through the community college space, you may have gone through one of the school districts, but alumni, let's see who's in the audience. All right, y'all are doing great. All right, give you about 10 more seconds. All right, let's see who's in the audience. All right, look at all those alumni from Vacaville, from some of our private, Travis, Solano, look at that. And then several of us are like, yeah, we went to school somewhere else. That's all right. We won't do that roll call for all the other high schools and interesting experiences you all can share after the forum is over, all right? All right, but again, welcome. Next question, real quick. Asking you about what part of the community do you represent? Okay, like what is your role in the community? So you may be a young person, you may be from the faith-based community, you may be a local business owner, you may be a partner or an agency. Okay, but please share a little bit about where you may fit into this space. And some of you may be a community member who's in a retired space where you're like, I'm living my best life, right? So sometimes we look at you as our community partners, okay? But you may also be an agency. But think about what you closely represent here in the city, okay? Okay, and if you don't see that up there, then go ahead and just place none of the above, okay? All right, about 10 more seconds. Let's get them in. All right, let's see who is in the audience. And then this is a great way to see some of the folks. So notice the community. And so for our officers, when we talk about community policing, it's really important to see some of the folks we partner with, right, to make this work happen. Okay, our local business owners, thank you. We know this is important work for you as well. Our faith-based community, very, very important to partner with you. Again, our young people, thank you for showing up because we do this because of you. You are the future citizens. And of course, there are several of you that fit a lot of different descriptions. You may be parents, right? You may be ones like me who like to just shop at this nut tree outlet. All right, so lastly, our age group. Let's talk a little bit about how old are we? This helps us give a sense of some of our context of our experiences. We talk about policing, we talk about equity, diversity, inclusion work. This always gives a lot of chuckles. right, about 10 seconds. All right, let's see what comes up. All right. All right. We got an interesting mix of folks in the room. Yep, I've seen some different experiences in life, different experiences each decade. So this is powerful discussion I'm excited to have today. Pretty powerful. All right. So as we get ready to jump into our work, the one thing we did talk about is equity, diversity, inclusion. Also, a lot of who we are shows up in our identity, our cultural identity. So this is really helpful for us to have context of who's in the room based on your own cultural identity. And sometimes we'll say racial identity, we'll say ethnic identity, but whatever kind of resonates with you the most, we do want to recognize that it may not have everything here that represents who we are, because our slide would be all around the room, right? But as best you can, choose one that really represents you the most, okay? All right. All right, almost there, about 10 more seconds. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up the results. So we notice the different identities in the room, thinking about the different perspectives when we talk about what does diversity mean to us. We may have very different experiences just based on these responses. And so it's important to think about that as we continue our work. We'll unpack that through the different lenses that you'll be able to share. Again, recognizing that all of our identity is not shown on the screen, but it absolutely is imperative just to know a little bit about who's in the room. And so what I want to do is I want to thank you for a moment for giving us that opportunity just to see a little bit about who's in the room. But let's talk about what our purpose is today. Okay, and you all again are going to get to introduce each other a little bit more at your tables. But our purpose is really today, honestly, to provide a safe space to have a dialogue. We know our community acknowledging some of the pain of the past. Some of you may remember a couple years back, Mr. George Floyd was murdered, and you may recall that that was a very, very hard time for people. You saw it all across the nation, really across the world. And there were dialogues happening, but they weren't always healthy and safe, right? People were attacked, and people were judged and hollering and screaming at each other. I know we didn't see any of that in the city of Vacaville at all. But the reality is this, is that we had different perspectives show up, and this caused a real dilemma for us when we talk about how do we keep our community safe, knowing that there's diverse perspectives, right? And so this is designed tonight to be a safe space for us to learn together, to discuss, and also to think about how can we develop a deeper partnership to commit to this work so that, as Chief said, everybody in the community feels safe, feels like they can thrive, and they feel like their experience matters, okay? The outcome, though, is very important, is that as the police go through their own experiences of growing and all the city departments are doing their own professional learning, I know there's a police audit that also is part of the process of just examining our policies, our practices, so we can be better. The reality is that we also need to know, besides those pretty charts we look at a lot of times, right, we need to know people's experiences. So we're here to collect what we call qualitative data, right, to actually hear people's experiences, perceptions, because that gives us a better idea of what the experiences actually are. Okay, and sometimes that doesn't show up in our charts, right? It doesn't show up in those demographic data points. But ultimately, I just want to honor and thank the officers for being here today, all the police staff, the city staff, because we're here to listen, right? And this is really important. We're here to listen to our community, the different perspectives, so that we can really understand better what does it mean to have this community policing through the equity, diversity, inclusion lens. So that's really our purpose tonight. Little bit about what has happened in this work so far. As Chief said, the City Council has already started this work actually a little over a year ago when we first started to partner. And a lot of the work was really centered around like what we call our why, right? Our why is because we have data that shows that there are some gaps in those experiences. There are some gaps in some of our practices that sometimes have yielded maybe a unhealthy experience for some. And so there are some goals around the strategic plan. I want to, give a shout out to your city manager, who we had a chance to really talk through, like, why are we here? What are the needs? And some of our data show that we need to be here to really look at maybe doing some things a little different. But ultimately, it's a moral imperative, right? Our why to this work is that we want to make sure that every citizen, again, feels like they can thrive in the community. And that's really important when we think about what does equity, diversity, inclusion mean. How all this work is happening is it's a long-term process. There's a lot of work. We talk about the safety, which I'll share a little bit about that in a moment. But professional learning is one way. It's just having our staff all across the city engage in what this work is. Obviously, engaging with the community like this is one way. And I want to give a shout out to the Vacaville Unified School District, because again, there's work that started there that actually connected us here. And so I want to shout out to Ramiro Baron, who's also a staff at the Vacaville Unified School District. Appreciate you partnering with us and also the work you have done to partner, because this community, go back to those young people in the back, they're going to be our future citizens, right? So it's always about partnering with people who have to support our young people. Very important work. And I mentioned the police audit also as a process too. But the outcomes of all this, so what does this mean when it's all said and done? There are some specific goals that will be set. There's some specific actions that will be laid out in that strategic plan. And so those will be the results of this work, which ultimately should be that we have community forums like these that really illustrate that the majority of our community, all the way down to each individual, feels like we are moving in a direction where equity, diversity, and inclusion is really happening for them individually. Okay, and so as we think about the work, one of the things that's important is you're going to find tonight we're going to have a little bit of elephant and blind man experience. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that poem. It was adapted from a parable, but the reality is that many of us come with our different experiences. Sometimes we call them our blind spots, right? Because we see the world in our own lens. And so what we have to recognize is, just like the elephant and the blind man experience, is that those people who had their own perspectives were arguing and debating about what that elephant was, and none of them said it was an elephant. Right? All of them were saying something very different. They thought the tail was a rope. They thought the leg was a tree trunk. I mean, they were all over the place, and they were all right. But then also, in many sense, they were wrong because they didn't have the full perspective. And so part of what you do in these dialogues is we'll have a little bit of elephant blind man experience where you all will be coming to this in a very different way. But when we talk about diversity, that means we have different perspectives, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And so what does that mean for us today? We're going to ask that as you get ready to go into your dialogue, that you actually kind of lean into these 4 agreements. So we're going to ask you to do that tonight. And you're going to hear these words said a few times. Is that one, you're going to hear us ask you to stay engaged. And what that means is that as you have dialogue together, you may have some different perspectives that may create some discomfort. And so we ask to just lean in and still try to learn more. Maybe I don't understand it, but I want to learn more. Okay, so we ask you to lean into the conversations versus disengage, right, which sometimes happens. There may be spaces where you feel like this is not for me and I just need to leave, right? Sometimes that's okay, but we're going to invite you to stay and engage, especially when we get to conversations that may create a little discomfort. Now, when we say discomfort, what does that mean? We ask you to actually experience it. So we ask you to see that when you actually have discomfort, you actually get to grow. Right? And so those young people in the back, they're going to go through growing pains if they're not going through it right now. I saw a tall one out there. I was like, I know he's going through some right now, right? Growing pains means you're getting taller, right? That's part of this work, is experiencing discomfort so that we grow. Now, what that also means is that we're going to ask people to speak their truth. So what that means is we're going to ask you to have your individual perspective shared and without apology, but also recognize that my truth may be different from the next person's truth, and that's okay. And so that's where we go back to be okay with the discomfort that comes when we have different perspectives. Ultimately, we're going to leave out, and we're going to have lots of non-closure because there'll be lots of questions we still may need to ask. There's lots of work we need to do. And what we're trying to get to in terms of a sense of community policing in particular, that's going to take time because we're all still learning about the different parts of our city. Every part of our city has a different experience. And so the reality is it's going to take time, and we have to be okay with that. It is a journey. And so what I want you to think about as we engage in these 4 agreements, we want it to be a safe space. And as facilitators, Dr. Holt and I are very clear about that. It is not a place to blame or shame or to attack, right? This is not what this is for. This is about a dialogue. And so it needs to be safe, but we know it might be uncomfortable. And so we may have to wrestle with that. But at any point if it feels unsafe, we will intervene because we want it to be a space that every one of us in here feels like we can speak our truth, but know that it may be uncomfortable because it may be different truths. That make sense? So if we're okay with that, we got a lot of great work to do today, and we're going to be super excited. Before we have Chief come back up and give a little context about some of the questions that came up and some of the things you may want to ask him first, what we want to do is just make sure everybody understands what equity, diversity, and inclusion is. So just give me a wave if you feel pretty comfortable about what equity, diversity, and inclusion means. Just give me a wave if you feel pretty comfortable. Okay? And if not, that's okay. Okay? Some of us may be hearing some of these words more recently, right? They've been pretty popular recently. Dr. Holt and I have been doing this most of our lifetime, right? But the reality is that it is not something that's well understood. And it could mean something very different depending on who we're talking to. So just want to give a little context. What does equity mean? So we'll start with just understanding equity is more like a process of just making sure everybody has equally high outcomes. Okay, and that we can't predict that some people may have a different outcome based on like a racial factor, a gender factor, any cultural factor. Okay, and unfortunately there are spaces we can predict those things. So we want to make sure that equity is for all, that they equally have outcomes that they can get to. And I'll show you a little image that helps describe that. Diversity is more about the presence of differences. Right, that's all. So different perspectives, right? Not that it's only one way of doing things, which is sometimes really hard for us when we've been doing things a certain way for so long. So the reality is that we want to ensure that diversity is respected, that it's valued, and that different perspectives are in the space that we're in. Okay, so that's a good thing. Sometimes diversity is seen as a bad thing, but it's a good thing. Now, ultimately, we can't forget about inclusion, because one of the things we talk about is it's not enough to just have diverse perspectives, right? If all perspectives aren't included in decision making, right, aren't included in any space that we're in, then what happens is we're really not doing this work to its fullest. So imagine if you're sitting at the table and there's 3 of you, but only 2 of you were able to speak tonight, right? Then that's not really respecting inclusion. We want to ensure that everyone has a voice. Okay, so you can see how they all go together. Now, for those of you that don't like a bunch of words like me, we want to look at it a little bit differently, and this is one way to see it, is that when we talk about equity, diversity, inclusion, we talk about this being something that is very much about everybody, okay, about everybody. And in our particular community, Maslow's is a great way to see that. Say Maslow's is a great way to see that. That Maslow's hierarchy of needs, 80-plus year research, it applies to every human being. So you can see that's a great example of where do we have equity happen for our diverse people. Everybody has those needs. This applies to all. We know that also when we look at this space, I'm going to have Dr. Holt give a little context for a moment. When we look at this space in our community, what does that really mean? So Dr. Holt, help me out a little bit, because this is really helpful when we look at an image like this to help us see, well, what is the difference with equity? Because some people have heard the word equality, and maybe we mix those up a little bit. So I'm going to ask you just for a moment to give us a little context, especially in the context of the city of Vacaville.
So when we look at what, in this image, I'm sure you've seen it many times before, and when we look at everybody getting the same thing, that's what equality means. But essentially, if you had any kids in school this summer or last year, you notice everybody got a device, right? Did everybody have the same experience? Absolutely not. Some people didn't know how to turn it on. Some people jumped in and were, I don't know, reprogramming the world. And it was all, everybody got the same thing, but they had very different experience. They came with different knowledge. And so equality doesn't always getting everybody the same thing doesn't mean that everyone's going to have the same result. Equity is getting people what they need, when they need it, in the way they need it delivered to address the current conditions. So you see there that the fence is there, and now everybody can see over the fence, right? And that's what we do want everyone to see over the fence. But in reality, most of our folks do not have what they need to even be involved. So that's really talking about access, being able to see over the fence and have access to what's happening. But what we really want to get to is a place where everyone can show up exactly who they are, exactly as they are, and we have removed the barriers that prevent folks from being able to show up authentically. That means that, if you notice, we've removed the fence. And the fence is the barrier that we keep on trying to have people see over, as opposed to get rid of the barrier altogether. And so when we talk about equity and getting to a place of liberation, we're talking about, yes, for the first step, we want equity where everybody can have access. But beyond that, we want to remove the barrier so that our children and our children's children can have a place where they can show up as they authentically are and not ever have to worry about the things that we've already taken care of. Last example I'll give is around the civil rights movement. A lot of folks, when Mr. George Floyd was murdered, it was an illumination for many folks that racism and oppression still existed in our American society. For many folks, they thought Rosa, sat, Martin made a speech, he had a dream, everything is right. And we really did believe that. For many folks, it was. But for other communities, it wasn't. And that was an illumination that we all can be in the same situation and have very different experiences. Another example of that would be right now with the Queen's passing. God rest her soul, but some people saw her as a beacon, others saw her as a source of oppression. Same experience, same situation, different experiences. And so as we go into this work, we want to remember that we can all be in the same situation. We are all here in Vacaville, but we can have very different experiences. And we want to give homage to everyone's experience so that we can all continue to be liberated. That's what we're going for.
Appreciate that context. You kind of see where we're going now with our 4 agreements. We got to stay engaged, experience a little discomfort, because the truth is that everyone may have a different truth about how they see this work. And that may cause a little bit of a feeling of discomfort that we want to continue to engage in. So as we get ready to call Chief up to just give us a little context, we want to remind you that some of you saw this piece here, the reality. You're like, well, what in Vacaville, what is the reality, right? Part of the police audit helps us to figure some of those things out. But the reality is we know that there's some things that the police department has to really wrestle with on a day-to-day to keep the whole community safe. And the reality is that we have a lot of data around not just crime, but safety. And think about staffing in itself is just a tough piece. Making sure that all the staff is trained, right? Because every staff member has a different experience. Some are more veteran than others, right? I mean, literally, you have so much that you have to think through. What does it mean to have stronger community relations, right? Some communities may feel different about police than others. These are things that have to be wrestled with. And so we have to really honor that this is going to give us an opportunity to think about how do we address some of the realities by unpacking some of the experiences, okay? And so, Chief, I know that one of the things kind of in closing is that we've talked a lot about the young people, and I know some of our officers actually have the distinct pleasure of working with some of our young people, right, through the SRO process, you name it. But I want to just remind us of one piece, is that as you all are continuing to think about this work and why we're here, remember that we want to think about doing this work early on and being really proactive so that the things that we're wrestling with as adults, right? I think about our city council and some of the things that they have to think about, right? Is these are all adult issues that show up, and you can see the list, and I could go on and on about some of the reality, right, of some of our community members. And so if all of our community members aren't thriving, we got work to do. Would you agree? And so they're the things we wrestle with, but we always say, as Frederick Douglass quoted, it's easier to build strong children, right, than to repair what we call broken men, and I say women and people, right? We have work to do. And so again, want to honor our young people tonight and help you understand the work we're going to be doing is going to be helping you to think about how do you sustain this work through what we call a systems approach, which is going to help us think about how do we shift our mindsets, shift the way our relationships look, shift some of the ways that we have power, right? The structures, who makes decisions. And ultimately, we have some resources, some funding, staffing, things we have to shift around because we don't have enough to make go around. You all know that. So how do we do that in an equitable manner? And ultimately, how do we shift policies and practices that will create a sustainable space where what I call all of our fish can thrive in this body of water we've been swimming in? Those of you that like resources you like to read, there's a great article you can look up, The Water of System Change, which actually helps us talk about the structure we use with our city staff to actually work through how do we address diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I want to invite you to take a look at that. And then also in our some of the things that Chief is going to talk a little bit about is just how do we get to the place place of policing, of community policing, and what does that mean? And there's lots of resources that the police will be exploring, some things that you all may be interested in, and just want to make sure that you can kind of see the process that we have encouraged to get to a space of real, authentic community policing. So with that, Chief, I'm going to ask you to come back up because I know there are some questions that they may have, but also knowing and acknowledging in our last session, there were a lot of questions we didn't get to. So we want to use this opportunity to open up the floor and allow Chief to share a little context. And then after that, we'll be going into our discussion as a community. Sound okay? All right.
Thank you, Nicole. I had to put the glasses on, getting a little older here. Can't see the smaller fonts anymore. And as I said earlier, the staff in the city manager's office do make me look good even when I can't make myself look good. So I was reminded, I talked about how EDI is driven from the top down, and I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize the city manager here today, Aaron Bush, my boss, as well as elected members of the Vacaville City Council, Councilmember Wiley, Councilmember Ritchie, and Councilmember Roberts. I want to thank you all for being here today. And also don't want to forget the folks that put this whole thing together with PowerPoint and cameras and all that good stuff. Wayne and Corey in the back, they're our PD team that makes all this happen. So I'd like to give all them a round of applause real quick. Okay, so at the first Community Policing Forum, one of the main points that was made was that, we learn so much more when we stop talking and we start listening. And that's, the opportunity came via a lot of questions that came in to the city and that we answered. It took us about 4 to 5 weeks to really get the subject matter experts to answer, and then pare down. Even though we pared it down, it was still 22 pages of questions and answers. So there was a lot of information, and you have that at your tables. There's a packet there with all of the questions and answers that came in. And so I was, okay, let me get to there's my slide. I was asked to cover some of the more popular subjects. So we grouped them into different sort of aspects, and there's 8 or 9 of those. So out of those, we looked at policy and practices, staffing, training, and community relations, which tended to have some of the better questions and the more deeper dives, if you will. So I'm just going to share a little bit about some of those questions. One related to policies and procedures asked, how does Vacaville Police Department learn from any mistakes it makes? For example, is there anything such as a grand rounds in the department where recent situation is discussed with several officers and better options for handling it are suggested or demonstrated? And the response to that, there's really 2 kinds of incidents that we look at. Some are the more substantial, large, significant, critical incidents that may happen locally, or they may happen on the complete other side of the country. And we have to look at those types of incidents. And across the department, there's critical reviews that take place on a regular basis, and they're completed by teams, individual officers, supervisors, and managers. We even have department-wide discussions at trainings as a way to identify areas of improvement, such as response, tactics, and de-escalation techniques. In addition, the teams routinely examine events from across our nation, critically examining them to identify best practices and response should they encounter a similar situation here in Vacaville. The other type are the sort of more everyday type of incidents. Every patrol team that goes out, and we have 3 every day, days, swing shift, and graveyard shift. Every one of those shifts has a briefing. It's usually a minimum of 30 minutes, maybe sometimes a little bit longer. And what the purpose of those briefings are to pass along information, but they're also to look at incidents that maybe happened the night before or on the shift before, and to really break those down. What could we do better? What did we see that we could change? How could we have de-escalated something? How could we have approached a scene in a different way? So there's constant review that's taking place within those teams. Each of the specialty assignments meets at least once a week for their briefing. So even though you're not in patrol, the briefings still do take place. One of the questions related to staffing, how is the department improving diversity among the management staff? Excellent question, and I'm just going to read it right off of the answer. Our department prioritizes employee development in order to provide opportunities for every member of our organization, including expanding leadership development courses to help staff succeed in seeking career advancement. But frankly, in order to accelerate, diversify the command staff, we must recruit, hire, train, and develop those future leaders who are part of those underrepresented demographics in our department. That's really what we have to do. And I got to hand it to our recruitment team. They're constantly looking at different ways of trying to recruit folks for our department. Hiring in law enforcement in general across the country is incredibly difficult right now. So it's a real struggle, but we also recognize the fact that we do need diversity. And I learned this morning that along with Parks and Rec, Parks and Rec has a lot of part-time employees, but in terms of full-time, the police department is the most diverse department in the city. So we got that. I was happy to hear about that. Next, I'll speak about training. The question was, how will you ensure that officers view all residents as being equally worthy as individuals? And the answer, the City of Vacaville and the police department are committed to ensuring employees treat all individuals with respect and dignity. This is just one of the core values that both the City of Vacaville and the Vacaville Police Department have. Additionally, the Vacaville Police Department provides a variety of reoccurring training to our staff in this area to ingrain inclusiveness and equality for all. Some of the training includes, but is not limited to, implicit bias, bias by proxy, racial profiling, cultural sensitivity, and LGBTQ awareness and education. All of our officers are issued and required to use body-worn cameras, and all patrol vehicles have dash and rear-facing cameras to record all contacts and incidents. An auditing feature included in the camera's software allows for the supervisors and managers to spot check random incidents and encounters. However, these recordings are always reviewed to investigate any allegations of misconduct or excessive force. One of the philosophies of the Vacaville Police Department is constitutional policing, meaning we believe in treating individuals with the same respect, no matter race, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, disability, economic status. And this expression is outlined in the Vacaville Police Department Standards of Conduct Policy, which can be found in the policy section of our transparency portal, the City of Vacaville Police Department website. In addition to being held to the standards in this policy, members of the Vacaville Police Department are held to a large number of additional policies, including policies prohibiting bias-based policing. If members of the department are found to have violated policies, they will be subject to disciplinary procedures. Again, those policies are available on the transparency portal. And finally, in community relations, the question, how will the City of Vacaville, or how will the city interface social justice issues between businesses, civic, city, and school organizations? City of Vacaville adopted the 2021-2026 strategic plan, which includes goal number 5, promote community engagement and increased equity and inclusion. One of the implementation strategies for this goal is to create and implement a comprehensive community engagement plan to enhance public dialogue and build trust between the organization and the community. While we continually learn the best ways to interface between all of our community members, events like this tonight, this community policing forum, are ensuring that we have the vehicles through which to get feedback and our community on issues important at both the local and the global level. Having that trust and communication, we hope, will serve as the foundation for future dialogue related to social justice issues. Those were just 4 of dozens of questions that were sent in. Again, you have those in front of you. Lots of reading if you choose to do that. Again, it's also available on our transparency portal. So if you ever have any questions about policies or anything specific to Vacaville PD, please visit our website. We pride ourselves on being open and transparent. So if there's something that you see or you're looking for that you didn't find, please contact the police department so we can take care of that. And with that,
So we're going
questions?
to just have about 5 minutes to just give, thank you for the overview too. There was a lot of questions that came out from the community, and so those were some of the themes that kept coming up, so appreciate just kind of reiterating what the responses were. But we wanted to open it up just for a moment to see if anyone had specific follow-up questions to what Chief shared, or if you had an additional question, because we also want to make this an opportunity to do a little bit of Q&A right now while we have the Chief, but then you're going to be able to do the same actually at your tables with your police staff. So any questions? Yes.
I did have a question I sent in, and it is, what is the impact on crime rates in cities where this has been implemented with EDI policies? What's the impact on crime?
That's
Crime
a good
rates.
question. I don't know, and I'm not sure if the research is out there. That's an interesting question, but
It'd be important to find out, though, wouldn't it?
yeah, off the top of my head, I can't. I know that EDI is being implemented in a number of agencies, not just police departments, but cities, school districts, a lot of government and municipal agencies. So, but that's a good question.
Well, I hope we can find out. It'd be important.
Absolutely. One of the slides we shared earlier actually are resources that actually show a lot of the data that you see from other spaces. But you also want to consider the comparability of your city in comparison to others. No city that's the same. And so we do want to look at all the different entities too, because policing overlaps with your young people, it overlaps with many different spaces. So it's important to recognize how you look at that data for Vacaville, because your situation may be very different. But those resources are really helpful. We just didn't have a lot of time tonight to go through all of them. But the reality is that this work, community policing, absolutely is essential when we talk about the experience data, which we don't have a lot of, by the way. Most agencies don't have a lot of qualitative data. We just have the pretty pie charts, which might say, yes, the crime rates look different, meaning that we have less use of force, or we have less crime in this particular part of our neighborhood. You can look at demographics, but the reality is that how people feel, that's often what we don't always have, and community policing actually impacts people's perceptions and feelings about feeling safe as well. So those resources are ones that we actually encourage you to look a little bit deeper into as well. Okay, we'll come back to that for sure. Any other questions? Great question. Yeah.
Hello, Chief. You made a comment regarding your department being diversified. Do you have any numbers on that, or a pie chart for that to share with us?
I don't have that for this particular PowerPoint presentation, but I can say that when you look at the 2020 census demographics of the city of Vacaville, we're not there. Our goal is to represent our community as best we can in terms of our staff and what that looks like, as percentages of our population. We're not quite there. We're working in that direction, but we're not there yet. But that's some information that we can locate for you.
Hello, Chief. I'm a dog trainer, so we'll start with that. And I look at our canines as a huge part of our community policing, and they can win over a lot of kids, but they can also be very scary. And the incident that happened in 2020 was a really big incident, and I thank you, first of all, for your in-depth response to the questions that were asked previously. And I wanted to point out a couple of things, if that's okay. We're still using the same trainer, and there has been, my focus in training is I'm a behavior consultant, so I handle a lot of aggressive dogs. I'm a training partner with the University of Davis, California Behavior Department. In my career, like any other professional career, I'm required to do continuing education and maintain my credentials. The trainer that you guys are using doesn't have those same requirements. And that's not something that's required with dog training, but it's something that should be if we want quality training. In your notes, you noted that your supervisors and the trainer is supervising the dogs. That doesn't have an outside contingent maintaining quality. And that's a big problem. He's lost all of his other contracts. We have people like Ken Ramirez, one of the top behaviorists in the world, and Steve White, one of the top canine behaviorists in the world, who are going out and training police dogs, and they're bringing modern behavior into working canines with police forces around the world. Your department is doing such an amazing job with diversity. You're bringing so much into progressive, modern policing, and yet you're leaving the canine department in the dark. And I find that incredibly sad, because I have absolutely, and I will tell you, I am the person that called in that video to the dispatch unit the night it happened. And I called it in hopes that we could shut it down before it went viral. I would love to meet with you and to set up an opportunity to bring in modern canine training to our police force, because I can help you find the contacts. I am not a canine trainer. It's not my area of expertise. I just know the people. And I would love to be a part of helping that and to getting a volunteer or group together to help make sure that things are going the way they should be, and to help bring in the things we do and maybe do some fundraising and get some better things together. Again, my name is Becca Hinton. Anything I could do to help, I would be happy to help with, but I would love to see our officers given the opportunity to learn modern techniques and have a wonderful partnership with their dogs so that our community could benefit from that.
Thank you, Becky. Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for
and
that.
Let's make sure we have Becky's information.
Yes,
Okay.
and thank you for that information. And I do look forward to partnering with you. The last thing, we talk about industry best practices, and again, we're not up here to say everything's perfect, but I do need that kind of feedback from the community and those kind of one-on-one opportunities for solutions, which is what you came with, and I appreciate that, to happen. So definitely, we've got your contact information, so we will connect.
Question?
Not so much a question, more of a comment. It almost sounds like a doom and gloom here, and I don't think that should be the case. As my dad would say, no matter how thin the pancake, there's always two sides. And my experience and the people that I associate with, they have positive experiences with our police department. And I think that it's easy to throw stones a little bit, and I think we have to be careful of that. And I think also, just from hands-on practical application experience, they seem to be doing a really good job with proactively policing, looking for a criminal element in our community. And the evidence of that is that you'll see social media and other posts about arrests, and then what do they find in the arrest? They find dope and guns. Well, they're out actively, proactively looking for the bad guys to take those guys off the street so they don't go out and burglarize your house and your car, or my house and my car. So I think that should be noted here. Second thing is, we're dealing with human beings. We're not all perfect. We make mistakes. Hopefully everybody understands that. And the last thing is, no police department, including ours, wants to have cops that are dirty and doing things wrong. That's why they have an internal affairs unit, and that's why they go out and pull people in for interviews and discipline or terminate them if it's appropriate. And they do that, and they do a good job of it. So I think that is a perspective I don't hear at all here, and I want to make sure that gets out. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking your truth.
Chief, thank you for the opportunity. Vacaville has been long known as a bastion of security and community. Regardless of the changes that state lawmakers have made, I'd like to see it remain that way. However, I've begun to see things that I've never seen happen in Vacaville before. Some of those things are probably out of your control. We have seen a tremendous spike in crime throughout California, the Bay Area, San Francisco, Vallejo, even Fairfield. What assurance can you make that you will not allow that to occur here in Vacaville? There's nothing down there that I want. I live here for a reason. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the best way to answer that question is to look around the room tonight and to see those staff members who do police this community, and they do a great job. And I think sometimes when a community policing forum and there's an EDI aspect to it, that has so little to do with like arrest and citations and that kind of thing. It's much more kind of global in terms of, you know, how we interact with the community. But I can tell you that the men and women of this police department love this city of Vacaville, and they work really hard to be the best they can be. We have had some legislative changes. We've had some policy changes. We've had you know, things that have happened that have made the job more difficult. But it's also created opportunities where I've seen some of the most creative policing ever. And we will, because it's Vacaville and we do have a relatively low crime rate compared to a lot of other cities our size and a lot of our other cities in our region, we follow folks where they go. They come to Vacaville, they commit a crime, we find out who they are. If they're from another city, it's an hour away, it's 2 hours away, it's 6 hours away. We will drive down there and we will make that arrest, serve that search warrant, and I love it when they see our patches, because then they go, you know what, I'm not going to commit a crime in Vacaville again. So, thank you.
So we have our last question, and then we'll go into our dialogue.
Thank you, Chief, for having us. I'd like to speak on a couple of topics. One, as a partner who works very closely with your department and somebody who is a lifelong resident, I've watched it go from the good old boys club to a very professional department, and I appreciate that. Number two, these boys, I appreciate you recognizing that they're here. They are our future. I can tell you that each one of them look up to every officer that comes before them, whatever situation they're in. We've had them come to our meetings, show up, just say hi. And I want to say thank you, because that says a lot about who your department is.
Thank you very much for that. I am incredibly proud of the people that serve in this police department, because again, you can go to different jurisdictions. Folks sometimes will show up and they're there for their 10 or 12 hours and they go back home to wherever home is. Here it's not like that. You know, we do have a lot of our police officers that live in town, but that doesn't matter. Those that don't live in town really connect with this city and really want to protect it. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Nicole Anderson.
Yep. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. And just thank you, community, for just engaging in a dialogue in the very beginning of this. So we're going to continue this dialogue, and I know there are a few hands who had additional questions. You're still thinking of those. I want to encourage you that there's an opportunity to ask more questions through the Did I lose it? Lost it already, Joanna. There it is. So Q&A, there are a few of you that still have additional questions, and so we want to give you an opportunity. Thank you. I want to give you an opportunity to also add additional questions if you'd like to continue to ask. But remember, we're about to go into our dialogue at our tables where you'll get to ask additional questions. You have police staff at each table, and so you'll also continue this dialogue as well. Okay, so we're going to continue it, and so if you had any questions that didn't come up, go ahead and please feel free to place that in the chat. I think I completely screwed up the slide, so forgive me. But what I want to do to get you kind of prepped for the next step is that I want you to think about how we're going to go into our dialogue at our tables. We may move a few of you around just to make sure we have some balance. We want to make sure we have enough of our police staff, our community members, and a great balance. And so the way this is going to work is that we're actually going to talk about these 5 things up on the screen that you'll notice. So the first is to keep this conversation going. You may have a real key question that you want to ask one of your police officers at your staff, at your table. Okay, so think about what those questions might be. Okay, you have an opportunity to have a deeper dialogue. I'm going to ask you to think about how you share your definition of equity, diversity, and inclusion, because it may be very different depending on your experience. So we want to hear that. Okay, that next question, number 3, is give an example, right? For many of us, we're like, and I appreciate what you're saying, like, Vacaville is a great city, and I would have lived here by now if my support system wasn't down the freeway. As a mom of 3, the babysitters matter. However, the reality is that there are some great examples of equity, diversity, and inclusion here, and we need to celebrate those. Like, what does that look like? Okay, so we're going to ask everybody to share that. The 4th one, though, is really important to also answer. Maybe there's a barrier to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we want you to share that, okay, and be very clear about what that looks like for you, okay? And lastly is we want you to share a solution. So although we're here to address issues, we also know that there is expertise in this room. There's a passion for this city and a love for this city. So what are those solutions to ensure that it's safe, but that it's equitable, that the diversity in this community is valued and celebrated, and ultimately that everyone is included in this great experience of living in this city? Okay, and all of these questions are all specific to policing. Okay, we know that there are some other topics we can talk about, but today in particular is just policing in the city of Vacaville, okay? And so these are our 5 prompts and questions that you're going to discuss together. Now, the way this is going to work is we have facilitators at your table, okay? So I'm going to ask first that our facilitators just wave your hand again, okay? Those are the bosses. You know what that means? When you get sidetracked, they're going to go, once you get back on task, right? Because we want to get through this, and we have about 40 to 45 minutes to do this, okay? So your facilitators are going to move you along through the process. They are also going to volunteer, we call it volunteer, someone to be a recorder. Okay, meaning someone we want to have to write responses. There may be, there on the tables, there are sticky notes, so you also can individually write your own responses to each of the prompts. But we want to have a recorder who is going to be able to write down the key highlights that you heard based on these 5 prompts. Okay, there's chart paper there for you to do that. And again, your facilitator is going to remind you how to do that. Some of you may want to pick a timekeeper because you feel like, hey, we need something to keep us on task. That's up to you, okay? But individually, we want every single voice to be heard at the table, okay? Now, what this looks like when it's all said and done is we actually want to hear everybody share out. So we're going to ask that we have a reporter, which is someone who is going to share out at the end. And depending on how much time we have at the end, we'll have what we call the 2-minute drill, which is for all those football fans, okay? Or it may be a 1-minute drill. And you're going to share out just the key highlights that were shared at each table. Okay, so we want to have everyone share out. And ultimately, those chart papers that actually illustrate those responses, we can have you place those around the room so that people can also visually see. Okay? Now, we're going to rebalance a few folks in a moment, but want to make sure you just understand the process. Okay? Dr. Holt, jump in.
I just want to remind everyone that if you had questions that you submitted earlier and you're like, well, wait a minute, my question wasn't answered out loud. Those answers to those questions, every single question, and let me tell you, every single one, every single question will be answered. So if you sent something in and you're wondering, like, where's my response? It is coming. And so this is really about really focusing on this moment in policing. I also want to, again, acknowledge that we do many things right. And that's when we have celebrations, that's the time when we really talk about all the things that go well. This is the time for us to look at where are we doing well and where do we have room for improvement? Because we know, as a great city, there's always room for improvement. So with that, I know we're going to shift some folks around, and we can, are we ready to jump into our dialogues?
I think so. I'm going to do a quick little housekeeping. I'm going to ask this table here, because y'all look like you're all excited. I'm going to ask that we actually shift you between this table here, and maybe one of you can shift to this table, that table, and actually any table, but I want to ask to shift because we want to have a little bit of a balance, if that's okay. And there's a recorder there too. Is that all right? All right, I appreciate it. Just one little caveat.
All right, go ahead. Your 5
okay, so
questions
I'll ask
are
you
here.
all if y'all can, hit that table just to make sure we have a good balance. Okay, and then,
A reminder to
there we
introduce
go.
yourselves to one another
All right.
if you have not already done so.
So now, for our facilitators, 7:15 is when I'm going to do my check-in. Facilitators, 7:15 is when we're going to do our check-in. Okay, facilitators, 7:15, we're going to do our check-in to prepare for our share-outs. They're coming, they're coming.
Well, no, they're going to, come on. They can do this. I'm a scout mom as well, I know. But we want to like a picture. We're not here yet. Come on over here. We'll ask you to come over here. Yeah.
snowballed into the city asking me to be part of the conversation, and here we are. So,
How are you? How you doing?
Hi,
Jason.
Sandy from HR.
Jason, good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
What's your sense of, I'm interested to hear from an activist perspective, what your impression is of law enforcement's opinion of like the Aubrey case or the Floyd case.
Yeah.
Like, what is your opinion of that? Like, how do you think officers see those situations?
It's a very good question, and I don't want to generalize, and that's where but I mean we all have this time here, so I wish that there was more folks within law enforcement that when they see bad things that they don't try to excuse it. And I'll use Ahmaud Arbery for example. I mean, he was killed in February 2020. The DA in that case, and this is 3,000 miles away, so I don't want to put this on Vacaville, but the DA in that case saw the footage, saw the video, and was like, just kind of put it on the rug, and then somebody leaked that. 3 months later, all this stuff's happening. It was like, wait a minute. Y'all knew this for 3 months. And then things started happening. I think that premise gets seen in a lot of communities. stuff, because then like your department, you're like, oh, we didn't do this, but then there's a lot of people up in Vacaville who are like, we know that you personally didn't do it, but unfortunately, I think oftentimes, for better or for worse, law enforcement gets lumped in, especially because of like the brothers and sisters club. I think historically what people have either seen or heard incorrectly or correctly. So long story short, I wish that when wrong happened, that like some folks within law enforcement were a little quicker to say like, that was pretty messed up.
So a nice way of saying WTF.
Yeah.
Right?
So just call a spade a spade.
So having come from a law enforcement agency in the South.
Yeah.
So I worked for Baton Rouge for almost 13 years before I came to California.
Yeah.
I see exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The culture of law enforcement, I would just say law enforcement, the culture there, the quality of training, the quality of the officers is night and day compared to California, right? There's a reason why you see these cases and they come from the Midwest or the South or the East Coast. And I'm not saying anything bad about those places in general. I'm just saying that when we debrief an incident in our briefings on a daily basis, almost always these cases come outside of California, right? Very rarely are there California agencies in the spotlight on law enforcement because the officers, the education they get, the training they get, as well as like just the progressive policies that are in place. Like I've advanced personally, professionally, exponentially in the last 15 years that I've been in Vacaville, but it's only because I'm in this environment.
Yeah.
And when I go back and I talk to people that I used to work with, I feel your pain, right? Like I left my department for a lot of reasons, but the straw that broke the camel's back was it was a politically motivated case. They wanted me to skirt the ethics, and I was not willing to do it.
Yeah.
So I understand exactly what you're saying. And that's part of the frustrating things about being a law enforcement professional in California is we see things through the same lens that you see.
Yeah.
I would say 99.9%.
Yeah.
And we are bad-mouthing these officers and these agencies for their policies and practices and behavior. Maybe not so much in front of a microphone or a camera, but we are criticizing and denouncing these actions. When I see it, when I see the Aubrey case, it just makes you sick, right? And and also George Floyd, same thing. Like, it just makes you sick. You're just thinking, like, you're shaking your head, like, what is wrong with these people, right? Yeah. And it hurts my heart even more than maybe someone that is born and raised here, because coming from Louisiana, like, as a Caucasian male, like, I was in the minority there when I left there. And I feel like the African American culture there is part of my how I was brought up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, and it's still part of who I am today. Like, I love being back there. Everyone is friendlier there than they are here. And I miss like in California, everyone has like a large circle of like, don't come in my circle, right?
Yeah.
And then in the South, like everyone like is like, how you doing? How's your day? And like if I tell a joke to you or you tell a joke to me, there's like, are you like all this stuff, right? I give hugs. Like I probably make people uncomfortable with the amount of hugs I give. Like I'll be on the side of the road and the lady will be in a crash and I'll be like, you look like you need a hug. I'll just hug her. Right?
Yeah.
This is how like, but that's the I don't want to say the African American culture effect on me, but like that's how I was just like in school and like my environment and working with the community for the 15 years I was there. Like it's just part of like what became me. So like especially for me when I see things happen to African Americans or other minority groups, and it connects to a law enforcement agency like somewhere out of California, like it just hurts my heart because it's part of like I think back to my roots and how I grew up, and even though I will never know what it's like to grow up as a different race or different gender or whatever, like I can feel it. So I understand exactly what you're saying. I appreciate your comments. I just I always think back though to so glad I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want to be around the environment, the culture, and I'm sure it's better now than it was when I left. But as you can see, these things still happen in the Midwest. Like I feel like like Minnesota, like just gets hammered with incidents that are in the public, national media spotlight, and rightfully so. And like these other agencies. So I appreciate your perspective on it.
Well, hopefully it's the first of many conversations for sure, because I love talking about this kind of stuff. I want to make sure.
Yes.
Now, I'll acknowledge. So you, Crystal. I'm Ryan.
Yes,
Nice to meet you,
I'm
Crystal. You are a part of. Are you with Dr. Holt?
I am actually Nicole's project manager, operations manager, behind the scenes person, kind of the one that keeps her where she's supposed to be.
All right. We all need that person.
Yeah.
So,
I definitely need one of those people.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I wear a few hats.
Okay.
I kind of came in on the tail end, but I keep hearing the Midwest. So I did just relocate to California.
Oh, from where?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Ah. All right.
And
very close to the epicenter of where a lot of these conversations have started.
Yes, and it's interesting because I walked in, I go, I'm in a room full of police, and that's not a good thing. We kind of and I was like, I said I feel so safe. Like I didn't feel. I don't know. I didn't feel the same. That.
Yeah.
The presence.
Yes, it's just it's attention, and it's definitely. I haven't been in California long enough to really, and definitely not in Vacaville. I've never spent. This is the most time I've spent in Vacaville, but I have seen that bubble, and I'm very, I even with disclosure, Nicole's my sister.
Okay.
And so I'm a hugger. And I go in and hug her, and she's just like, I'm like, girl, it's like, but that's the California thing, right? Is everybody has an agenda. It's like,
We're a very busy state.
yes,
Everybody's
very busy, and so it's interesting to see the dynamic so far, and that it's vastly different. I'm in Vallejo because of Nicole. I don't know any cities to really live in, so I just kind of, it chose me.
Yeah.
Reminds me of St. Louis.
Okay.
So I feel at home.
Good. Good.
But it's interesting. I never see Vallejo police. I only see Benicia police.
Oh, interesting.
Because I'm on the cusp, I think I must back up. Well, I do.
Okay.
Like my door, if I were to step, it's like right there.
Okay.
So I don't see that police presence.
Yeah.
But in terms of just the California feel, I haven't thankfully had to experience any policing.
Okay.
So I'm very new, very new.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, Sandy, I know you, employee relations manager for the city.
I work for the city. We met. We've met.
Yeah.
I think we've all met. Yeah. So I wasn't here at the other session, but came along to help facilitate as needed here.
Yeah.
This one. Yeah. So.
Mainly, I wanted to make sure, because I was like, I think the five of us at this table were all a little bit different parts of communities, of course, but not like nobody came.
Not general public.
Yes.
Now,
So
do you work for the city or?
I don't. So I
might as well. He does everything.
I do some stuff. I used to. So for 4 years, I was a Parks and Rec commissioner for the city of Vacaville. So I did it from 17 to 21. And definitely when I went in at 17, I was really gung-ho. I was like, I'm gonna learn a ton about the city, and maybe one day I'll run for city council. And then, I got two small girls. I absolutely love spending time with them. And as you well know, being a public official takes a lot of your time, as it should. Like you're representing 100,000 people. There's 100,000 people that are looking to you to make sure they're all safe. And, so I personally decided that that wasn't the route that I wanted to go. But then around the same time, Chris and I were talking about this earlier. I think in 2020, with some of the just work that was going on that summer, I got connected with Aaron and Nolan Sullivan, Delana Harris at the time. They had asked me to be a part of some conversations going on with EDI work, and I was really honest and said, if you're looking for a black face of this, I do not want to be that. And they were like, no, like we're really serious about this work. And I met Aaron, and I could tell he was really serious about it. Did a couple conversations, had Chief Carley, and then Chief Carley retired. To me, it was abruptly, and it just kind of disbanded. And then Aaron was like, no, we're still going forward with this. I really enjoyed Chief Carley, really enjoyed everyone in the group, so I was bummed. But Aaron was like, no, we're going to be a part of it. So kept on going, and here I am. So not employed by the city. Even when they asked me, like,
you live in Vacaville?
I live in Vacaville,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, they asked me, like, what? How do you want to describe yourself? I'm like, I don't know, like, just dad. We're a recruiter, but then it's all confusing. I technically own a business, but I barely sell anything. So it's like, I don't know. I'm just Ryan.
You have to make a lot more than ice cream.
I make ice cream, and then people are like, can I buy it? I'm like, no, you can't. Sorry. Yeah, it's all.
A little ice cream side business.
I do. I did. I used to sell.
It used to be a journey.
Yeah, I sold at Journey for 3 years, and then the pandemic happened, and it just didn't make sense anymore. It was always a side project, so I never, didn't need to continue. But I started working on a children's book at that time, and then I actually just released a children's book. So I technically have the business still, so I'm still doing that. And now I'm
So you're an expert time manager, is what you're saying?
no.
How do you have all these things going on? I'm
all luck. All luck.
You're still here.
Yeah, I'm here. This means a lot to me, so I'll make time for this all the time. So, Jason, I know we've all got to talk, and I know, so what brings you here?
A lot of different things. So, I grew up in Fairfield, spent 20 years over there before I joined the military. So I've lived all over the country. I know exactly what Chris is talking about Louisiana. I spent a lot of time there, family over there. Mostly the northern part of Louisiana, but a lot of friends down south in Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Lived in North Carolina, Georgia, DC, Arizona. So seeing a lot of different communities and perspectives. One thing, like you mentioned, like California is very different. Like one thing I enjoyed about Louisiana and North Carolina is people are generally nicer out there, and I think there's a better sense of community because especially North Carolina, like I knew everybody in my entire neighborhood. It's like every summer, it's like every week we'd shut down the street, have like a block party or barbecue. In Louisiana, there'd always be crawfish boils in the summer and the fall. And when I moved back out here, is like maybe hang out or talk to one or two of my neighbors, if that. It's like where, over there, it's like I knew everybody that was like 2 blocks down, and they see me driving home, they wave me down, be like, hey, we're cooking, come over after you change. And I was like, all right, just walk down there and grab whatever food I had. It's on city council. I mean, those three know that. Actually running for mayor right now, so that would be interesting.
You're running for mayor?
Yeah.
I didn't want to add that too, but I was like, I hope Jason mentions the one other thing that's happening right now.
A lot of extra work I added to myself there.
Yeah.
I've had very interesting experience with PD growing up. I know Chris and Poland and Larson know it is. So when I was probably about 6th or 7th grade, one of my uncles was being paranoid schizophrenic, like to self-medicate. He was actually killed by Fairfield PD when he was having a major episode. And so I didn't like the police for a long time, especially because I lived in a not-so-nice neighborhood to begin with. After growing up and working with a lot of PD, a lot of it had to do with the training, how they deal with mental health now is very different than the early to mid-90s. And so a lot of that is attributed to training and personalities. There's a lot more good old boy system there. Growing up, I've worked a lot with Vacaville PD. I've done a ton of ride-alongs. I work with state police chiefs and Cal OES. And so it's like, there's been a huge difference, especially here in California versus other states. Like most of my civics classes or political science classes are like, we're going to talk about everybody else, and then we'll talk about California in its own lectures, because the way we do things is vastly different than every other state in most aspects. Yeah, we're essentially like our own little small country.
Even to register your vehicle.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I miss about North Carolina, my $35 a year vehicle registration.
No, what in the world?
But you do pay a very hefty highway tax fee when you first register your vehicle. It's
And
like
you'll do it.
$700 or $800, but
You'll
then after
do
that,
it.
it's $35 a year.
You'll do it every year.
Yeah.
Well, we do personal property taxes, but I mean, I already paid it in Missouri, and I'm like, and you want it again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getcha.
They sure do.
Well, I'll put it this way. I know they did mention that I need to facilitate some stuff, but it's a little bit different because the five of us were like, it's a little
Coming
bit
from a
different.
different place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll ask the questions. I'll take some notes in case. I don't think they're going to ask us because there's no community members that are here. But
I still have questions for you too.
oh, please. Yeah, we can. I would love to spend this time and we can go through the questions.
I mean, it's on topic, but
Oh yeah.
I
Hey,
just wanted to
ask
say,
away.
when you talk about knowing your neighbors, I drove into my little condo subdivision, and he was like, "Hey!"
People like to me, you're like, what is she doing?
And this man and his dog, he sits there every day. And he's just, and I'm like, "Hey!"
he's probably calling 911.
No.
Who is this woman?
Finally, I stopped waving.
Some woman
I'm
walking
like,
around yelling at me. I don't know what's going
and I'm
on.
like,
It's funny, like coming from even like St. Louis, you'll notice here that you'll trying to merge, you put your blinker on, and no one's going to make eye
They just
contact,
ignore you.
and no one wants to let you in. And then when you let someone in, you don't get that wave.
I've been
You
waving
don't get
at
that
people,
wave.
I think. They're like, "Is she flipping me off?" That's
It's
what-
like there's so many like little subtle things that are different.
They're just worried about their own little bubble. They don't.
But it's funny, like it makes me super conscious of those little things. When, first of all, like when I'm in a black and white police car, I'm super conscious of the fact that everyone's looking at me in that car, right? As opposed to all the other cars, right? Everyone's going to notice that car is at the intersection. And the little subtle things that we can do, like if I'm not in a hurry to get somewhere, maybe you have the right of way, but I wave you on, right? That little positive thing, right, makes a difference. Okay, that makes a difference. And officers have to understand that those little things that we can do, or you pull up to a car, look over at who's in the car. If there's a kid, wave at him. If there's a dog, wave at him. Roll your window down. Say, how you doing? How's your day? And then drive off, right? All the little things, and we can talk about getting out of your car and walking through businesses and things like that, but it's the little things that give your police department an identity, I feel like. You know what I mean?
I've been waving at policemen too.
What's that?
I've been waving at policemen.
Yeah.
Here or
In Vallejo, but they're Venetian, and I'm like, because I'm taking her to school, I'm like, they're like,
Yeah.
See here, I mean, I feel like we're more used to it here. And when we have like, I'll give you an example, an applicant come here that works for a different agency, we have a lot of Oakland officers, San Francisco officers, Richmond, Antioch. They are blown away by the interaction with the community. Just driving, passing, like you pass someone walking their dog, they wave. Usually it's the other way, like it's something else that's going on in these cities, but it's overwhelmingly positive. I feel like that doesn't mean we don't have more to do.
yeah.
And that brings me to my question that I had for you, which is living here and being an activist. I'm curious, like, what kind of personal contact you've had with Vacaville PD, if any, or any other police department that have kind of like helped you form an opinion of law enforcement in general. So, and you can answer the same thing.
Yeah, good question. I always try to preface, I mean, like there's like a group of activists like within Vacaville that like really do like activist like work, and I feel anytime somebody was like, oh, like Ryan's activist, I'm like I feel like I'm not. There are so many other people that are doing significantly more work than I am. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, it's like I even got out of like the public service because I was like, I just want to be home with my daughters. Like I'm well aware of that, and like I mentioned, summer 2020 when I got into it, like I quite frankly I had a breakdown because the amount of expectations, the amount of messages that I was receiving from people, I was like really surprised. I was like really blown away, and like I had a breakdown. So I was like, oh wow. So I realized through other work, I was like, my work is somewhere else. So that's why I tried to do a lot more like behind the scenes stuff, working with the city, doing things like this, because this is definitely my speed. But to answer your question, it's funny, when I was younger, you know, around Vacaville, I got pulled over like a lot. Now, since I've been back in Vacaville, I moved back in 2014. I think I've been pulled over once, and it was for like a very, I didn't even know this existed. It was like my light bulb over my license plate, like one of them was out. But I gotta say, I was driving home from a date with my wife. My wife is white, you know, so she hasn't necessarily had the same experiences I've had. We got pulled over, and like my heart was racing. And I gotta tell you, Chris, no offense, when I saw that it was a person of color who was coming up, I was like, oh, relieved. Only because I've had interesting experiences. I remember when I was 20, I lived in a gated community. My parents, were doing okay. We lived in a gated community in West Sacramento. I was out front with one of my friends, and one of our neighbors didn't think that I looked like I belonged, and they called the cops because they thought there were some suspicious people. So when the cop pulled up and was like, ID, I was like, what do you mean ID? I live here. I need to see your ID. Why? Well, just want to know what you're doing out here. I live here. And this is one experience out of a billion things that are going on. But things like that have colored my opinion, because I've also been profiled in stores. I've been looking for my car in parking lots, not knowing exactly where I parked, and I've had police follow me. There's just a lot of little things, and I feel like in the grand scheme of things, I'm really lucky, because I talk to my other friends who are black, and they're like, listen, I've dealt with this, I've been pulled over, I've been arrested for this, I've been, this and that. And I remember when I was, I don't know, maybe like 10, 15 years ago, I was hanging out with a couple friends of mine, all black, and my buddy's dad came into the room, and he was like, I gotta let you all know how proud I am of you. And I was like, what does it mean? Like, okay, like, what's he mean? Like, I'm 23, 22, and he was like, all of you, none of you have been arrested. All of you are good kids. And I'm thinking, like, man, that's such a low bar. And then when I look at, like, the statistics of the amount of, like, young black men who are arrested, who are profiled, even this morning to prep for this, I didn't know if they were going to have me speak or anything like that. So I was like, let me look up some statistics, and I'm not going to use any of them. But, like, the rate at which young black men are profiled, shot, you name it, in certain interactions is significantly higher than our white counterparts, and it's wild. So it's kind of a rambling roundabout answer. I personally have good experiences. Like, I can walk in this room, and to your point, like, I came in, I was like, oh, there's a lot of officers in here. But thankfully, like, I've got Ian's number. Yeah. And I know that is a privilege that not everybody has. Yeah. Like, I've met you tonight, I've met the other Chris, Megan King and I, like, I've known her for 15 years. So, like, my comfort comes because I know a lot of people, and I know that comes from privilege. That's not the case everywhere, so. Anyway.
So it's funny, like, the evolution of policing, we had a call similar to your sitting outside the gates of the apartment complex, someone calls in last week. And so it wasn't exactly the same, but similar. And I called that officer, and I said, call the person that called us, find out if there's any more information. If there's not, clear that call. So we're not even going to go to that call. Yeah. We're not even going to go to that call.
I like that. So, like, North Carolina, housing is significantly cheaper than it is here. I actually, last year when I was there, I lived on a PGA golf course, like, big, like, 4,000 square foot house. Me and my buddy rented it because we're both from California. Like, we can rent this 4,000 square foot house for, like, $2,000 a month. We're like, done. But it's like, it's like, because I usually have, like, shaved head, tattoos. Yeah. You see me walking around, I'm usually in flip-flops and a hoodie. That's usually how I walk around. So it's like, we see, like, my roommate was black, and so, or my housemate. So when we were both going up to this house, we got police called on us. And we're like, wait, no, we're renting this house. And then it's like, we're both military. So we're like, no, we're military, we're renting the house. That's fine. But that happened like twice if we came in like gate or something like that. People were like, I don't know. The guy that worked at our gate was pretty good, but having come from the other side of town, we always get stopped. We're like, no, dude, we live here. Yeah. Like my old neighborhood in Fairfield. I don't know how familiar you are at Fairfield at all.
A little bit. I've never lived there, but
Yeah,
sort of
kind of down by the mall, like you're saying,
Yeah.
there's Bristol Tabor, there's the 7-Eleven, so not the nicer neighborhood.
Yeah.
So my neighborhood was primarily Hispanic, it's almost like a barrio.
Yeah.
You go down to Bristol, it's primarily a black neighborhood. There's always like fights.
Okay.
And then my complexion, most people just assume I'm Mexican. I'm Japanese and white. And so I always got thrown into one group, and then a lot of interesting interactions growing up.
I bet. If it was, I'm gonna ask Nicole a question. I just want to see if I'm like, I don't think she wants me to write anything because we're all good here, but I'll be right back. How about you?
I'm just going to share an example of kind of similar in St. Louis. Daughter goes to school. Both my daughters go to school in a pretty affluent neighborhood. So I do a lot of what I call my figure eight in that neighborhood. And so I go into Walgreens, and my oldest daughter, she's 20, she was 21 at the time, so not too long ago. And my youngest would have been about 12. And he said something about the light or something on the car.
Yeah.
So it was one of my tail lights was out. And so I'm at Walgreens, and I have an adult. She had to be 21. She was sitting in the car with my younger daughter. The younger one looks old enough to be teenager. And I pull out, and I guess he had been circling the car or something, so my oldest daughter's panicked. And the look on her face was just mortified. She was just like, Mom, I think this guy is going to arrest you because you left us in the car. I'm like, what? Like, you guys are old. And so I pull off. He follows me, pulls me over, and I go, hands up, whatever. And I'm like, seriously? I had to do the whole hands on the dashboard, put your hand out and I have these kids in the car, right? And fast forward, daughter's over there like crying, like tears are just like, oh my God, Mom. And I'm like, it's okay. And I'm like, do I comfort my child? Like, and I go, officer, I'm going to hug my kid right now. Is that okay? And he says, I feel like a jack. I would say a donkey, right? Because one, why are you pulling me over? To come up and say, hey girl, your light's out or whatever. Go get your light. And it was just a profile kind of thing. And it's interesting because I'm a fair-skinned black woman, but my daughter is she's darker complexion. So all that to say is when I told him I knew the chief, I'm not going to tell you how I know the chief, but I told him I knew the chief. And I said, because I did a lot of equity work in the school district, and he goes, I just feel like a jack, and I shouldn't have done this, and he apologized to my daughter, and that was the first, I guess, interaction that was positive, somewhat positive outcome, where they, policing, they tend to have this time, more human. Yeah, it was a human interaction. And so, with that being said, I did place a phone call to the Clayton police. They can learn a thing or two from
Yeah, because an apology doesn't make it right.
No,
right.
She was, when I say I think she probably would have had a, accident had she been alone. Yeah. Because she was that afraid. She was that afraid. And it was just so unnecessary. Like, you have nothing more to do than to stop a single mom coming from Walgreens. I've been at work, that whole, and he's just like, I feel like a jack.
I appreciate these stories, and I love hearing everyone's stories, and what I wish, like the only thing that I would, maybe not the only thing, but I just wish that when we tell our stories like this, that we get a sense of like empathy that goes along with it, because I've told similar stories, and the response I've got from other people have been like, well, what'd you do? What were you doing outside of your house that was suspicious? Why did they have to come in general?
I was going home.
Yeah. There's just such a lack of empathy when it comes to a lot of these situations. And like, I don't know, like what we say, because people assume that there's like an us versus them, there's a police versus black communities, this and that. And like we're all part of the community, and quite frankly, if trust is improved, that makes your job easier, that makes my life simpler, you know, so that's why like I will fight, so I'll fight to the end to ensure that like we're building trust within communities, and that's why it just hurts so much when I see that trust get eroded, when I see it in situations like I'm an Armory where it's like somebody's clearly trying to cover it up, you know, when I see acquaintances, I won't call them friends, but when I see acquaintances, and I've even had family members make racist remarks. One of married into the family, former police officer, God love him, he's done amazing things for our family, but the way that he talks about like his police colleagues, which I know he has a lot of loyalty to them, he'll make comments that I'm like, do you understand that your nephew is black? Like, do you understand what you're saying right now? And just the animosity that some people feel towards communities, it's like we are all in this together. I know we're in a very individualistic society, yes, but all of us are connected in some way, and our trust, our safety is directly tied to your job, my life, your job, like you're all over the place. So
just so you know, when I get stopped by the police, I feel the exact same way you do. Not the exact same way, but like I'm like shaking, and I'm like, oh man, like.
That would be an interesting outcome, you know, like.
It's no, I mean, I don't want to say it's no different. I don't mean to cut you off, sorry. But I am like, my heart rate. I mean, and you know, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, but I don't want to say I don't want to characterize my saying I feel the same way, because I don't feel the same way you do. But I am physiologically changed during that 5-10 minutes, right? And I don't think I've ever gotten a ticket since I've been law enforcement, right? By another law enforcement officer, but I still have the same reaction. Like, how are they going to approach me? How are they going to be? Are they going to yell at me? Am I going to get a ticket? And then are they, I mean, this person's walking up to my door with a gun, right? And I shouldn't just assume that everything's going to go the way I would do it, because you never know what you're going to get, right? And it only takes, you could have 12, 15
I love you, Josh.
contacts
You are
in your
hilarious.
lifetime. It only takes one to ruin all the rest. You know what I mean? To ruin all the rest. So, I always tell my people,
all right, Nicole, we're ready for our first table?
All right, if I can get your attention in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Beautiful.
All right, we are going to stop partying in here, because had I not said anything, you all would go for another hour. However, it was great dialogue, very powerful. We heard people speaking their truth, jumping into the engagement of being uncomfortable because there's different conversations. But ultimately, it is now time to hear what our community has said all in as a whole group. So the way we're going to do it is Dr. Holt and I are going to bounce from table to table. We are not doing the 2-minute drill, okay? We are going to do the 1-minute drill, which probably turns into 2 for most of us. But the 1-minute drill, so what that means is reporters, you are going to stand and you are going to use the microphone to share out. Some of you have recorded those responses and you followed directions. Others, you responded on a different sheet, right, versus the chart paper, and that is okay. We don't give F's or D's in this space, in this classroom, all right? However, please just share out highlights, okay, of your discussion based on these 5 prompts. Highlights. Okay? And then individually, the responses you have, we're going to ask you to leave those at the table before you leave so we can collect them all. Okay? And we can be able to collect those as part of our data collection. Okay? We ready? All right. We just bouncing from table to table. So reporters, be ready. Dr. Holt, 1 minute starting now.
We have 1 minute. Let's turn our attention to Rayan, who's going to be our first one to tell us. All right, let's give Rayan a round of applause. So ready? You ready? You got this.
So I'm starting off with number 2 because we didn't really write anything down for number 1. So we talked about equality, diversity, and inclusion. Our main topic for number 2 was mainly just race and how people should be treated from police and the community itself. So we came up with we really just came up with treating people how you want to be treated, no matter race, because race shouldn't be depending option for how you should treat people. So number 3 is example of equality, diversity, and inclusion related to policing. We wrote down, don't judge based on how a person looks. So pretty much just treat people how you want to be treated. Don't judge people on how they look, and don't instantly take sides on whether or not someone's black or white or age. So for the 4th one, share a barrier on equality, diversity, and inclusion by policing. We wrote not enough budget for education and learning for new recruits, as well as people who has been here but would still like to learn more, especially people with canines, like my mom stated. For our last one, number 5, share a solution to create equality, diversity, and inclusion in policing. So we wrote connection with the community, so like try and listen to people's opinions and don't take sides on what you like, and try and have everyone vote on a specific thing instead of just 1 or 2 people in the community. And then, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, all right. Everybody needs to go a little faster than that, but Rayan did awesome, didn't he?
Drop the
Yes,
mic.
all right, next table.
All right, I'm going to pick on table 10. You should see the looks on their face.
All right, I'll keep this quick. I know we got the 1-minute drill going on. So the first question we have is share one question you have for the police staff, and we brought up a staffing concern. Why do we believe that staffing is a little bit lower than what it should be? We talked about pay being less than other cities, stress, morale, mental health issues. So we talked a little bit in depth detail about low manning. The second one was, how do you define equity, diversity, and inclusion? So we talked about seeing a reflection of yourself when you walk into a room, feeling part of a community, feel like you're part of the room, and no judgment, be intentional, and bringing many backgrounds and cultures in as possible. So moving to number 3, we said share one example of equity, diversity, inclusion related to policing. So what we talked about was doing ride-alongs, so that the community can actually experience what the police force is experiencing. We talked about judging others based on their character, building relationships with the community. Number 4, we talked about share one barrier to equity, diversity, inclusion in policing. We talked about people not listening. That could be a barrier. We need to start listening to understand. Number 5, share one solution to create equity, diversity, inclusion in policing. Again, listening to understand, creating opportunities organically, finding common ground amongst ourselves, and then using creative training and execution and being consistent with that. So those are our answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Ready?
Powerful. Excellent. Thank you, table 10.
Oh. They follow directions, so. Copy your banner.
For number 1, we said traffic, homelessness, and officer accountability. Number 2, training, needs of others, ensuring outcomes for all, and walking in someone else's shoes. Number 3, resources. Number 4, racism, sexual identifiers, who says we met EDI or if we have. And number 5, conversations and discussions.
Beautiful. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. Awesome. We'll put this up on the wall.
Powerful. All right, I'm going to pick on table 1.
All right, so for our questions, they were resources. What are the resources available for police, specifically for mental health and access to arrest data? It's public knowledge, right? Anyways, how do we define equity, diversity, and inclusion? We all kind of had our different ones, and we went around and shared them. It was different views, inclusion of people of different backgrounds, removing barriers so all can participate, everyone getting more opportunities depending on their background and their starting points. Those were all of them. And then share one example. We have the Junior Giants baseball and softball through the POW League and crew. And the barriers would be, I believe, like racial bias or people's perception. So what is their perception is reality, right? And then share one solution would be more awareness, increased communication on why the policing is happening.
Powerful. You're starting to hear certain themes maybe, but also some very different perspectives, which is very powerful so far. Thank you. All right.
Okay, and by the way, I tried to walk in somebody else's shoes. My wife's shoes were way too small for me. I fell down, hurt my ankle, so I just want to throw that out there. Okay, the question number 1, we came up with a couple of different answers. How are staff trained to respond to potentially problematic persons of color? That's our question. Number 2, we want to make sure that everybody feels safe and they're part of the community. And if you respect others and humanity and dignity, then you're on the right page. So we need to be making sure that we do that. Number 3, share an example. National Night Out. Almost everybody here hopefully has gone to a National Night Out, and ours up the street, very diverse, very full of good people. Number 4, share a barrier. The uniform and maybe a badge-heavy, over-authoritative individual could be a barrier. So you have to make sure that you kind of take your foot off the gas a bit. And then number 5, one solution. Make sure that you remember that we all make mistakes, and make sure that you don't go into a situation predisposed to an answer or an opinion, and make sure that you are respectful of other people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, first, thank you. Actually, I learned some things this evening, and I think that might have been one of the goals, so thank you very much for this opportunity. First question was, we were concerned about any changes to hiring in order to meet noble goals, and I was assured that there have been no changes to the standards. The word equity began to divide. We understood the words diversity and equality because there are denotative and connotative definitions for that, but equity all over the map, and it became a problem, and I'll relate to that a little bit more. Question number 3, lots of different backgrounds, shape, sizes, education, experiences, especially the background. Number 4, the barrier to hiring in the police department. I think we generally agreed that there is insufficient K through 12 education and preparation for these people, and I'm going to expand on that for number 5. But you can't get hired if you can't read and write and speak. And we think that's a barrier, and it hurts our police department because people who would otherwise be great police officers can't get there because the educational system has failed. Number 5, this is where I learned something. I'll be quick. Get the pen to throw at me. I learned about resource and training, and having been teaching college since '95, I would stay after school to help students that could not really read the test questions, and yet I knew they knew the answers. So I learned tonight that that's called resource, because the union got mad at me for staying after school, reading the question and explaining the words to my students. This is at Solano College, ladies and gentlemen. This should not be happening. So the word that I learned about was resourcing. So the police department must have people that know how to resource people who are insufficient during their contact. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Powerful.
Ready, Shane?
Okay. I'm going to try to summarize this in, what, a minute?
1 minute.
Okay. One thing here in our group, we got stuck on training. You know, our question on number one was, okay, training. How much training is there and where is it? We slipped off into the mental health training, the equity was, you know, police officer, you stop me. Are you going to stop the next guy and treat him the same way? That was our, I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. You can't. I'm sorry. It's one of those, equity is one of those, treat everybody the same. And that was the thing here. And it's part of the training again. They're trained to do that. And they're trained for situations like the mental problems or whatever they would run into. Training is there. You know, that's the thing we have is that training, that equity. And we did confuse equity and equality together. We did. Yes, I did. But the extent, my solution, more training, more, more training, more resources to go to the training. The barriers, us. Yeah, we're our own barriers. So.
30 seconds on the clock. 59? All right, cool. I'm skipping to 5, so I'm cheating, so I would really make sure I stay under that minute. Share one solution to create equity, diversity, and inclusion in policing. The 5 of us here at this table have had an amazing conversation tonight, and the really cool thing is that the 5 of us from all different parts. I'm from New York, got Louisiana, Fairfield, but spent time all over the world, Missouri, Vacaville, California. We are from all over the place. We all have different experiences, and quite frankly, over the course of, 30, 45 minutes, we had great conversation. There needs to be a lot more of that within policing, within communities, conversations like this that helps us progress and move forward. So that's it. I do okay?
Okay, I think, yep. All right, so for our first question, I'm representing table 13. Share one key question you have for the police staff. Our question was, what is the PD doing to recruit more minorities and women? And we will get back to that because I do have an answer for that. Number 2, how do you define equity, diversity, and inclusion? So we essentially said that what EDI looks like is providing resources to people in order to provide everyone an equal opportunity for success. So what that means is that sometimes some people may need more resources than others in order to give others that equal opportunity. Number 3, share one example of equity, diversity, and inclusion related to policing. Training police officers to better understand cultural differences and awareness on topics that may be important to others. So I know we talked a little bit about awareness on pronouns. The police department actually has a new system where they're able to log the pronoun that individuals are more comfortable with onto their profile. Number 4, share one barrier to EDI in policing. We talked about people who can't really relate to officers. So I know there's some situations where, for example, an individual may not be able to really relate to a police, let's say there's a police department team. Talk like that kind of brings us to the next question. Share one solution to create equity, diversity, and inclusion in policing. I'm going to go back to that cadet program. So if we offer programs to youth, for example, like the cadet program, it helps us reach out to a community that, you know, can be the future police force. I know right now there's about 19 cadets with the police department, and it's actually the most diverse cadet department the cadet team that has ever been. So kudos to the PD for that. But that just, you know, ties back to trying to encourage more diversity into the department in order to have a bigger police department that's more reflective of the population here in Vacaville, which can help our community feel more connected to the police department here.
Awesome.
If I could get you to hold my visual later. So we spent the vast amount of time dealing with question number one. We had a lot of questions for PD staff relating to some of our underprivileged community members, business owners, homelessness. It all kind of came down to how we want to partner with our community to try to help make Vacaville a better place. So we had a long dialogue and discussion about that. In terms of how we define equity and diversity and inclusion, a lot of what we said was just creating a level playing field, treating everybody fairly, treat people how you want to be treated, and then just making sure that we're enforcing a lot of that education, because some people don't know, right? So we teach people, and then that helps kind of bridge that gap. A barrier that we had was, like I just said, communication. Sometimes not showing empathy for other people's situation, their perspective, where they're coming from, their lived experiences, and so kind of keeping in mind that they're forming their opinion and outlook based on the life that they've lived thus far. And so really focusing on that communication before passing any judgment. And then a solution, which goes along with communication, our solution that we had was nights like tonight, where we can all kind of get together and we can actually have these conversations because we don't know what we don't know. So tonight is pretty valuable. Thank you.
I am an agent, and he is just like me. We all have a
All right, so question one, shared key question you have for the police staff. Two things that coming up are our response to mental health. We talked about mobile crisis and other things that have been coming into play over the last year. Staffing, why are we so understaffed? What are we doing to combat that? As far as the definition for EDI, it was pretty easy. We all agree with the photos up there. Were really good illustration of what we think EDI to be, offense pictures in particular. Gives an example of equity, diversity, and inclusion related to policing. I put my hand right up and I was like, team one watch, one lineup. It's easy. We have Hispanic, Asian, Caucasians, we have 20-year-olds, we have 50-year-olds. In one lineup, it's a PD. So we're not where we need to be, but we have a lot of diversity in the police department itself already. So that also important to bring up and celebrate. 4, share one barrier to EDI and the inclusion of policing. We had unconscious bias, and specifically we talked about like maybe neighborhoods or parts of the city, and it's going to be breaking through historical views. Some places maybe carry a stigma with them, and we're talking about breaking down those stigmas through our answer number 5, which was this. Something like this, starting the conversations, taking the time out to make the relationships in the community and build bridges, find out what the problems are, and come with solutions together as a community. Specifically doing these types of table talks, but on a, not just a macro level, but a micro level. As the chief brought up earlier, we're going to go into the communities and have these types of conversations. So that's what we're looking forward to here.
Great job.
Powerful. There we go. All right. And then Dr. Ho, got one more mic to grab at the middle table. There you go. All right. So you heard just kind of a brief share out. Great job. Most of you did it in the most. I told you probably need a 2-minute drill. But you can see just in that short period of time what we collectively heard. and what you heard in terms of the barriers. You agree that those are some of the things that we've been missing, just seeing people who are different, right? Treating people the way we want to be treated, right? Something as simple as that. But also understanding that we may lack training, right? We may lack certain resources that may become a barrier. But you see, as you start to unpack these things, you start to also hear the solutions. And there are some great solutions that I heard, but I know there's also more that you have here at your tables that you've recorded. So again, we're going to ask you to leave those at the table so we collect them and add those to our qualitative data summary that we want to put together. Because we know that officers, staff who have heard from your community, was that powerful just to hear the different voices from the community? Yeah, and how informative it is just to pause out of our busy days just to get to hear these different perspectives and keep this dialogue going. And so I want to commend you on the 4 agreements. Dr. Holt, they stayed really engaged to the point where had I not pulled you back in, you would have kept, we've been talking right now. So thank you for staying engaged. Thank you for leaning into the discomfort. Anyone feel a little discomfort today? Hearing different perspectives, right? Learning something new, right? A little bit, as I told people, it's not that painful, right? Just talking is not that bad. But ultimately, did we all speak our truth? I think that's super important. You feel like you shared your truth, your perspective. Really important. We know that that is a journey in itself. But lastly, it is past 7:30. And we still have a lot of non-closure, right? We have a lot that we have to accept, but also expect that we have a long journey. Our police chief and staff have a lot of work that they're already doing to keep this community safe. And so I want to commend them on the great work that's happening to build upon that, but also to recognize we still have more work to do, right? And so we still have a future of young people who are coming up. We have so many different ways to look at the diversity of this community evolving and growing, which will always present challenges. But I think you're in a great place. Every city isn't doing this work. I just want you to know that. I'll say it one more time. Every city is not doing this type of work. And although we haven't solved all the problems today, we try. But the reality is we have a lot of work to be done, but you're on the right track. Lastly, there's a lot of people who didn't show up tonight. So I'm going to challenge you as community members, as officers, as city staff, as our council, anyone in this space right now, our young people, keep the conversation going. That's how this work becomes more real and organic, I heard, right? Is keep the conversations going. And we're the ones in here who can do that. And so with that, I'm going to place on the screen real quick a last QR code for you. So before you leave, we want to make sure we get your feedback. So if you want to get that on your phone so that you have that so you can give some feedback. Obviously, there's more questions you still have. So you also have an opportunity to ask more questions. Okay, we want to make sure that you add more questions so that the police staff can have responses for you. They did a phenomenal job of responding to all of the questions our last forum, and we want to continue the same. We also invite you to follow us on social media, right? It's a big deal. A lot of times to get information, you actually need to plug into where the information is shared. And so sharing those spaces, YouTube, some of you are on video tonight more closely than others. We look forward to seeing you celebrities on our YouTube channel. But it was great dialogue that ultimately there's going to be missed tonight, so we get to capture that and share. So y'all have a survey in there? No. All right, I'll leave it up because we do want to make sure we can close out and allow our chief to give us some closing comments. Dr. Holt, high five, are you there? Dr. Holt is the bomb, huh? And again, there's so much love that we have for you. Just thank you for allowing us to sit here just to help facilitate a dialogue. So thank you, Chief. I'm going to give it to you. And thank you for a great community forum tonight.
Thank you. Let's give Nicole a hand for really taking us. So in closing, I want to again thank you all so much for taking the time to be here. This is so important to creating what we all want, which is a more perfect police department, a more perfect community. And in God's eyes, maybe we'll never get there, but we sure are going to work towards it. This is the kind of work that gets done, and I've heard it from a number of these tables. These are the opportunities that we have to sit down, get to know one another as human beings, as well as your civil servants here in town. The OIR report from the police audit should be coming in late this month and hopefully reported to the city council on the first, I believe it's the first council meeting, October 11th. If it's not that one, it'll be the second council meeting. And now that I've said that, it's not happening. So tough luck. Again, thanks so much. Please go forward. Hopefully you have, you've met some new people, made some new connections, and like she said, contact the folks that weren't here, get involved, get engaged, but keep the communication going. Thank you all so very much. Have a great evening.